Someone put on Instagram that Tim Dillon's video where he was saying that Michelle Obama should run for president. If she won, she could pull her cock out and China would just give up. I was wheezing. I couldn't breathe.
Everything seemed to be going Michelle Obama's way. Her interviews were graceful, her anecdotes inspiring, and her demeanor effortlessly charming. She was gliding through a media circuit that seemed tailor-made for her, spreading motivational messages and reminding everyone why she's one of America's most admired public figures. Her appearances struck the perfect balance of relatability and poise, reinforcing her carefully cultivated image. Then, suddenly, Joe Rogan and Jesse Waters stormed onto the scene, bringing a level of critique that disrupted the narrative entirely. Rogan's blunt honesty and Waters' sharp sarcasm turned Michelle's flawless PR moment into an unexpected storm of controversy. What could have possibly provoked such strong reactions from two of the media's most outspoken commentators? Whatever it was, it's now the topic of heated discussions across the internet and beyond.
President dies, everyone in the world shows up, and she doesn't break her vacation? It's not like she doesn't have access to a jet. Something is going on. Let's speculate.
Yes, please.
It's either surgery.
Oh.
That was my least controversial thing.
What kind of surgery?
She will not sit close to the dictator. And by that, I don't mean Hillary, I mean Donald Trump. Or there's trouble in paradise between Barack and Michelle. I've heard things, I'm not going to substantiate that by repeating these rumors on national TV like I just did. But I'm just saying it's very odd that she's...
Michelle has often shared heartfelt stories about her upbringing, emphasizing her parents' modest values and their choice to avoid pursuing excess wealth. Her narrative paints a picture of humility, simplicity, and grounded living. However, her current lifestyle seems to tell a very different story. Today, she resides in an $11.75 million mansion on Martha's Vineyard, employs private chefs, and enjoys the spoils of six-figure speaking engagements and multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and major publishers. These luxurious details, juxtaposed against her tales of humble beginnings, create a stark contrast that critics have been quick to highlight. For many, her words about modesty ring hollow when viewed against the backdrop of golden goblets, extravagant settings, and crystal chandeliers.
But Michelle wants you to remember it wasn't the Obama-Biden White House. It was the Barack and Michelle White House. Listen to how she uses the words we.
I'm so proud of my husband. The way he led, the way his administration worked, the team that we built. So proud of everyone. I think that's because of who we are.
Did she just forget to mention Joe Biden? Michelle, as your husband said, you didn't build that. But if I were Joe Biden, I don't know who I'd fear more, Trump or her.
Joe Rogan, a man known for his unfiltered takes on everything from the bizarre to the controversial, was left nearly speechless by this disconnect. Despite his experience dissecting topics as varied as UFO sightings and the complexities of modern society, Rogan found Michelle's dual narrative of unparalleled wealth and relatable humility difficult to reconcile. To him, it wasn't her success that was problematic. It was the attempt to maintain an image of everyday relatability while living a life that most Americans could only dream of.
Michelle Obama's speech on day 2 of the DNC was a masterclass in irony.
She and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed.
The Obamas have a combined net worth of $70 million and they own a bunch of...
Jesse Waters, never one to shy away from calling out what he sees as hypocrisy, was equally critical. He turned his attention to Michelle's podcast, which he described as lacking substance and filled with personal grievances disguised as deep reflections. Marketed as empowering and insightful, the podcast failed to resonate with its audience, coming across instead as a series of self-indulgent therapy sessions. Waters even joked that Spotify might have overestimated the appeal of a show that seemed more concerned with brand maintenance than delivering meaningful content.
Rogan is calling out Oprah and Michelle Obama for hypocritical speeches at the DNC. Watch.
She's up there talking about income inequality. Like, hey, lady,
Yeah, I know.
you're rich as Like, how is that equal? And also, when Michelle Obama was saying, you know, I think she was saying her mother or grandmother was always suspicious of people who took more than they needed.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
you are
yeah,
worth so much money.
Take more than they need. The Obamas have 4 mansions.
Michelle has long been positioned as a beacon of morality and an apolitical guide for the nation. She's portrayed as someone who rises above the fray, offering wisdom and inspiration without getting bogged down in partisan politics. However, her frequent and well-timed appearances during critical moments for the Democratic Party tell a different story. Time and again, Michelle steps into the spotlight just when the Democrats seem to need a boost, lending her voice and presence to rally support. This pattern has led some to question the true extent of her apolitical stance, with critics suggesting that her actions are far more calculated than her image suggests.
Sometimes been wondering where Michelle Obama's been. She spelt both Jimmy Carter's funeral and Trump's inauguration. And last week, Barack went to a basketball game all by himself. Turns out Michelle's been busy working on a new podcast, and so far, it's been a flop. The first 2 episodes have been up all day and only gotten a few thousand views on YouTube. Half of them were probably primetime producers. But still, Michelle's spilling the family secrets, like how Barry gets on her nerves.
Her podcast is a prime example of this carefully managed persona. Touted as a spiritual and emotional journey, the show instead delivered a mix of elite name-dropping, recycled therapy buzzwords, and vague calls for activism. Critics, including Waters, found it lacking in depth, with Waters labeling it a high-budget diary entry. Michelle didn't shy away from discussing personal struggles, from her relationship with Barack to her challenges as a mother, but these revelations often felt more performative than authentic.
Joan Rivers said that Michelle Obama was a man before she died.
Was it a joke? I thought it was a joke.
I thought it was a joke too, but the way she said it wasn't like jokey. She was like, oh, come on, everybody knows Michelle Obama's a man.
Like,
remember that?
Yeah, like, would Big Mike kill you for that?
Then there's Becoming, her Netflix special, which was promoted as an intimate look at her journey. Instead, it came across as a grand production, complete with stylists, camera crews, and dramatic flair. While the message was one of resilience and relatability, the execution felt anything but ordinary. The documentary turned book signings into full-blown stadium events, complete with pyrotechnics and confetti. Joe Rogan, once again, couldn't help but point out the irony. A woman, worth millions, preaching about how money isn't everything while surrounded by extravagant displays of wealth.
Barack, he had to adjust to what on time was.
Because he was on that island time.
Well, but, I've got this husband who's like, when it's time to leave, it's 3 o'clock, he's getting up and going to the bathroom.
Michelle says her husband doesn't really like people, doesn't know how to talk to him, and doesn't even...
Waters was quick to highlight Michelle's dual image as both a luxury brand and a moral leader. He noted her advocacy for public schools, delivered from the sidelines of her daughter's private academy, and her knack for appearing politically only when the stakes are high. Waters likened her to a political superhero, stepping in when the Democrats need saving. Her entrances almost cinematic in their timing and execution.
Got it.
No, Michelle is a
I'm sorry, she's a what?
transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty funny how she said it.
Okay,
Michelle's recent TV appearance was billed as a moment of vulnerability, but it followed a familiar formula, wearing a designer dress worth thousands. She spoke about the emotional toll of being admired, eliciting praise from fans and the media alike. Joe Rogan, however, wasn't impressed, calling it spiritual cosplay. Waters speculated that Michelle's frequent denials of political ambition might be part of a broader strategy, positioning her as a backup candidate while maintaining her non-campaigning facade.
Michelle has a Netflix special with Oprah, and when Oprah taps you, that means it's your time. The Obamas know that. It was Oprah who was the first big name to support Barry's run for the White House. So what does this mean? Well, for one, it means Michelle has another book, and she wants the world to know it's her world now. That she, not Barack, is the real.
Waters described this as political maneuvering at its finest. Michelle insists she's not interested in running for office, yet her actions tell a different story. She remains a fixture in the public eye, carefully managing her image and influence. This balancing act, staying relevant while avoiding direct political engagement, has made her a unique and polarizing figure in modern politics.
Now Michelle is having her Hillary moment. Barry had his 8 years, so Michelle's demanding her time to shine. Michelle's on a roll, and now she's center stage.
The woman who needs no introduction, for real, Michelle Obama!
Michelle's meticulously crafted public persona seems less like an authentic individual and more like a polished product designed for mass appeal. Both Joe Rogan and Jesse Waters have noted how her carefully managed image often eclipses the substance of her ideas, leaving behind a facade that feels more marketable than meaningful. While there is nothing wrong with achieving success or wielding influence, the stark disconnect between her messaging and her luxurious lifestyle has become increasingly difficult for critics and audiences to overlook. Her narrative frequently frames privilege as struggle, a strategy that resonates with some who admire her resilience but frustrates others who see it as disingenuous. This dissonance undermines the authenticity she seeks to project, turning conversations about her work into debates about her contradictions. For those who feel alienated by the contrast, her story is less about relatability and more about a sophisticated branding exercise. Michelle's ability to balance these opposing perceptions keeps her in the spotlight, but also leaves her vulnerable to sharp criticism.
Normally, when someone rags on their spouse, there's usually a little love. Like, you know Jimmy, he never listens, but he looks cute in his suit. But that wasn't cute. Did she drop this podcast to distance herself from Barack so she could run for president? Every politician starts a podcast right before they launch their next campaign. Looking at you.
In the end, Michelle Obama represents the complexities of maintaining authenticity in a world dominated by media narratives and public scrutiny. Her story, though deeply inspiring to many, has become increasingly entwined with a meticulously managed brand and carefully curated messaging that often overshadows the genuine aspects of her journey. Joe Rogan's unfiltered critiques and Jesse Waters' sharp observations have drawn attention to the growing inconsistencies in her public persona, exposing the challenges of reconciling her image with her actions. These cracks in her carefully polished facade are becoming harder to ignore as public discourse shifts from admiration to skepticism. For some, her reluctance to engage directly in politics feels strategic rather than sincere, raising questions about her ultimate intentions. Is Michelle Obama truly content with being an inspirational figure, or has she been quietly preparing for a more influential role all along? As the media continues to dissect her every move, the gap between her words and reality poses a compelling question: how much of her reluctance is real, and how much is part of the plan?